And now I get to share some good news. Actually, I consider it to be great news. Here it is. Despite all the negative impacts of COVID-19 on the education of K-12 students, we know that there has been one very positive outcome, and that is this opportunity to make some much needed changes in education. And let's look at some of the changes that are already happening. As schools around the country closed their doors, the federal government took steps to provide support to the American citizens. One of the first actions taken was the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which guaranteed sick leave for workers and their families. It increased food aid for families, provided free testing for those who may be infected with the virus, and expanded unemployment insurance. And you can just imagine the impact of that on the families who have children that are school age. But more specific to education, the federal government passed the CARES Act as well. And this act provided over $431 million in federal aid to help the public schools of North Carolina address the pandemic. The federal government also provided flexibility in laws related to the Every Student Succeeds Act. And so it allowed districts to repurpose federal funding to better serve students during this time, provided waivers to testing and accountability rules, and granted school systems greater flexibility in meeting school calendar requirements. And in addition to the federal response, the North Carolina General Assembly has also taken a number of steps to support students and families across the state. Senate Bill 818 maintained the current teacher salary schedule and provided step increases for teachers. In addition, it provided a one-time bonus of $350 to teachers and support personnel. It called for Governor Cooper to approve a one-time bonus of $600 to school employees. Then we had Senate Bill 476, which required the State Board of Ed to adopt a model mental health training program for personnel who work with K-12 students. House Bill 1043, the COVID-19 Recovery Act, provided 5 allotments to support students during the pandemic, which included the following: $1 million for school bus Wi-Fi, $11 million for home and community Wi-Fi, $10 for contracting mental health professionals, $1.4 million for new learning management systems, and $15 million for grants for exceptional children's services. This all falls under the backdrop of the recent Leandro ruling, which directs the State Board of Ed in partnership with the General Assembly to create an action plan to assist schools and districts in, and I quote, mitigating the disproportionate impact the pandemic and resulting school closures have had on at-risk students. The Leandro ruling goes beyond the current year's plan for addressing inequities during the pandemic, and the state is now required to invest close to $500,000 addressing the existing achievement gap. These actions by the state and local government have really led to significant positive impact on the students and schools in North Carolina. I would also like to highlight some initiatives spearheaded by the North Carolina State Board of Ed. The State Board is providing guidance to the local school districts on reopening plans and scheduling. Our school districts are currently developing plans for 3 different reopening scenarios, including minimal social distancing with attendance of the full student body, moderate social distancing where there's limited social distancing to about 50% of the population at one time, and then remote learning as the third option. The board is also addressing school and safety needs by creating policies around social distancing, cleaning and hygiene, the monitoring of symptoms, the management of COVID-19 cases, communication with various stakeholders. And in addition to student health and safety, employee health and safety and support is also addressed in the state plan. More specifically, plans are being made for monitoring employee symptoms, protecting vulnerable populations, providing support to teachers for coping and resilience, and adapting policies related to employment and personal leave. Social, emotional learning, and mental health are also key components of the state's plan to help students as they re-enter the public schools. Administrators and teachers and student support personnel will receive professional development related to trauma coping strategies and resilience. The state board is also addressing policies to ensure the maintenance and safety of school facilities, the ongoing provision of school nutrition, and policies for safe transportation of students to and from school. The state board is really concerned with combating misinformation in the media, including social media. So as a result, the state is creating a communications plan which will provide accurate information to school personnel and parents throughout the upcoming academic year. Furthermore, plans are being developed to align instruction and needed resources with each potential reopening plan. This includes alternative means for determining learning needs, the provision of professional development in remote teaching, the reinstitution of athletic and extracurricular activities, as well as before and after school programs. Finally, the state board has approved school districts to create and implement Jumpstart summer programs to address the needs of students who are most vulnerable to that summer slide that we discussed earlier. And the state board, in collaboration with districts and other stakeholders, has worked tirelessly to prepare for a successful academic year. If you would like to read more about this plan, please read Lighting Our Way Forward, which is included. It's a document that's included in the additional reading section of week 6. I think the most exciting aspect of preparing materials for our time together this week was the gathering of information from local teachers and school administrators about how they had supported students during this difficult time. And here's what I've discovered. And please know that each individual, each person I talked to, and each school I visited I just left feeling or into the conversation feeling so much hope and joy. I have to say that teachers and school administrators are truly heroes. A couple of weeks into the shelter-in-place order, I was working on course preps when I heard a great deal of commotion outside. I went to the door and I witnessed just a heartwarming parade of school administrators and teachers spreading joy and sharing messages of love through the streets of Hickory with their big, huge school parade. One sign on a car read, "We love and miss you, students." I mean, these teachers were just sharing so much love. Another school partnered with Lenore Ryan's School of Ed to borrow some older models of iPads for students who were in need of a device to use at home. And the school actually delivered the devices to the students' homes, which I thought was very neat. Other schools in the area, they partnered with businesses to increase Wi-Fi access. Hickory Public Schools delivered food by bus and provided both breakfast and lunch for its students. In a visit to Southwest Primary School, I was blown away by how much the employees were doing to meet the needs of students. They had developed a system of wellness checks. Simply stated, if school personnel were unable to contact students through Zoom each week, they would make home visits to ensure that the students were healthy and safe. When I spoke to Miss Erin Sigmund, the principal at Southwest Primary, she was eager to tell me about the wonderful staff development that was taking place throughout Hickory Public Schools. Upon inquiring about the content of the staff development, she eagerly informed me that the teachers were learning more about providing social and emotional support to students by creating trauma-sensitive classrooms. And I learned that the paraprofessionals at the school at Southwest Primary were spending their days by either delivering food to students on the buses or painting murals on the wall through the hallways. The murals are based on some wonderful pieces of children's lit, like Chicka Chicka Boom Boom and the Word Collector. And when I saw these murals, I found it impossible to stop smiling. They were filled with bright colors of paint and they just radiated just positive vibes. And on a more personal level, I remain grateful for the varied methods of communication that my high school daughter's teachers used to remain in contact with her and to continue the professional relationship throughout the remainder of the semester. The memory of the day my daughter received a handwritten letter from her math teacher is one I treasure. She opened the letter and read it multiple times. She was grateful that her teacher had taken the time to write such a professional letter. In fact, I think it motivated my daughter to continue doing her best despite feeling somewhat lonely as she found herself, a true extrovert and social learner, confined to the virtual school setting. The positive effect of this random act of kindness, this letter that she received from her teacher, actually inspired me to send handwritten letters of encouragement to each of my college students as they studied and prepared for final exams. I've also heard of other teachers who called each of their students just to chat on a bi-monthly basis. I also decided to begin communicating with some former students who are now teachers in the local school systems just to see how they were faring during this difficult time. And I mean, wow, just wow. I continue to be amazed by their unyielding commitment to their students. One teacher made home visits to his students when they completed an online module, and he did not show up empty-handed. Instead, he invested in a snow cone machine and would arrive at the students' homes with a celebratory homemade snow cone. Another creative teacher used the children's book Flat Stanley to increase communication with her students in her class. You know, if you're unfamiliar with Flat Stanley, it's a book where a bulletin board falls on the character Stanley and it flattens him. And this ends up being a great thing because he's able to send himself on an adventure across the country by being mailed in an envelope. So using this idea, this teacher created a flat Bitmoji version of herself and delivered copies of herself, the flat version of herself, to the homes of students to discover more about their adventures during the pandemic. Again, I was amazed by the efforts of our local teachers and administrators who continued their work as heroes. So, I guess to summarize all of these things, I just am filled with hope when I see how much effort the federal government, the State Board of Ed, and the local folks are doing to support students, our K-12 students, and their education during this very difficult time. And I think these changes were needed. And I think that we're going to really do some great things now as we move forward. And so I want to leave you with this quote from Bernard Williams, who stated, and I think it's important now, this quote is important now because this has been such a weird and strange time. But I think it's important to always think about the positive. And so this quote from Bernard Williams is, "There was never a night or a problem that could defeat sunrise or hope." And I would add, that includes you, COVID-19. Thank you.